lytudiep welcomes everyone back to lytudiep channel. Are you worried that lytudiep has been gone for too long? There is information that she ran to the cliff in the deep forest. James and the police are trying their best to search in vain. Is lytudiep's health still stable? Are the bloodstains left on the path she walked mean lytudiep is injured? Let's follow along. The rain poured like a curse from the heavens, pounding mercilessly onto the forest canopy, each drop a drumbeat echoing Diep's fragile will to survive. She trudged forward, every step a battle against her weakening body, every breath a defiance against the cold that gnawed at her bones. Her clothes hung in shreds, soaked and heavy with mud. Her lips were cracked, her skin pale, and the venomous snakebite on her leg burned like a silent fire. But her eyes, though clouded by exhaustion, still glimmered with one unshakable thought: James. Somewhere beyond the mountains and mist. He was searching for her, and as long as he was still looking, she would keep moving. She had to. She didn't know how many days had passed since she fled from the bandits, stumbled through treacherous terrain, and collapsed beneath the storm. She only remembered darkness, the cold sting of venom coursing through her veins, and the desperate prayer she whispered into the wind. She hadn't been a religious person. Not truly. But in that moment, lying alone in the mud with death breathing down her neck, she had begged for one thing: time. Just enough time to see him again, and miraculously, she had woken up beneath the gentle glow of dawn breaking through the trees. Her eyelids fluttered open. Pain was still there, deep, relentless, but so was life. She sat up slowly, limbs trembling, vision blurred, every joint aching as if shattered. Yet something inside her roared louder than the storm had: James. His name pulsed through her mind like a heartbeat, steady and strong. The man who had once wrapped her in silent embraces, who had promised, "I will always find you." But this time, she would be the one to find him. Far away, James stood in the rain, soaked to the skin, the picture of Diep clutched in his cold fingers. His shoes were caked in mud, his voice hoarse from asking the same question over and over again: "Have you seen this girl?" Village after village, shelter after shelter, nothing. Just tired faces, sympathetic glances, and silence. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Each rejection only made him hold that photo tighter. James wasn't alone. Officer Lee, a man hardened by years in the field, had once saved Diep as a frightened teenage girl during a deadly landslide. Now, seeing her face again on that missing persons report, the memories flooded back like a wave. He remembered her eyes full of fear, her body trembling at the edge of a cliff. He had risked his life for her once, and he'd do it again. Lee organized search teams, plastered posters with Diep's photo across every forest trail and mountain path. This wasn't just duty, it was personal. Meanwhile, Diep wandered deeper into the wilderness. Her body was nearly spent. Fever lingered. Hunger twisted her stomach into knots. She stumbled upon a small mountain village, heart swelling with hope. Her voice shook as she knocked on door after door. "I don't need much," she whispered. "I'll work. I'll clean. I just need a little food. I'm looking for someone I love." But times were hard, and though the villagers looked at her with pity, no one reached out. She smiled and thanked them anyway. She understood. Not everyone could open their doors to a stranger who looked like she had crawled out of disaster itself. She turned away, her shadow stretching behind her under the fading afternoon sun. The road ahead was long, cruel, and unknown, but she would not give up. Not for herself. For James. As the sky turned deep violet, she raised her gaze and spoke into the wind. "As long as you're still looking for me, I won't stop." Her voice was soft, but steady. The kind of voice that survives the storm. Back at the edge of the forest, in a small roadside tea shop, James sat in silence, a cold cup untouched before him. Across from him, Officer Lee said nothing. Words didn't matter anymore. Only time did. And love. James finally spoke. Barely more than a whisper. She was so close. And I missed her. His fingers clenched the photo again. Lee placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Voice slow but resolute. Then tomorrow. We walk again. One more step. And then one more. Because somewhere out there, she's still walking toward you. Miles away. Deep pressed forward. Her bare feet blistered. Her legs quivering. But her heart aflame. The image of James carried her like wings. Lifting her from despair. Her love had become her strength. Her compass. Her reason. In the vast wilderness between them, fate still held its breath. But they kept walking, one toward the other. Two souls. Unyielding. And somewhere between rain and prayer, silence and hope, love continued its quiet miracle.